Good afternoon. This is your mini lecture for week number 8. This week we're going to talk about motivation and emotion. So let's get started. Think about what motivates you. Now, if we break that down and think about what motivates humans, we can come up with 3 different categories. The first one would be hunger. Obviously, we all need food or fuel for us to be able to do what our bodies need us to do. The interesting thing I've read is that we are not supposed to be eating at breakfast, lunch, and supper. These are times that our society has decided is appropriate for us to eat. However, if you want to be in good health, really you should be eating when you're hungry. Obviously, that would create a lot of problems for those of us that have children, but that's really the way our body was designed, is for us to eat when we're hungry. The second motivator would be the need to belong. And even the most introverted individual wants to belong somehow to some sort of a group. And think about that. As humans, our job is to procreate and to make sure that our genes are passed on from generation to generation. And what they found is if a human forms an attachment, they're more likely to reproduce. If they're more likely to reproduce, there's more likely to be a feeling of love. And that love is going to activate the brain's reward and safety system in the prefrontal cortex. So it is pretty important. And then the third one is achievement. And we all have a physiological drive to maintain a constant internal state. That's called homeostasis. So we don't want to be too hungry, but we don't want to be too full. We don't want to be surrounded by too many people, but we don't want to be lonely. We obviously want to achieve, but there's a line there too. And so our body really tries to help us maintain a nice equilibrium there between those states of motivation. Maslow is one of the individuals that your book talked about as far as the different needs, and he developed the pyramid. Very popular theory. I believe we talked about that in an earlier chapter. But the important thing to remember with this pyramid and his theory is that we start off at the bottom with the physiological needs. If you are hungry, if you don't have a place to stay, you're not going to be able to concentrate on other things that are going on in your life. And so the physiological needs are really most important. The highest order relates to self-actualization. And, he believed that some people will not be able to achieve that, but really understanding yourself, having that higher purpose, and being able to give back would be that self-actualization. The second topic is emotions, and obviously these are responses from an individual. According to most emotion theorists, it has 3 different components. The first one is your body arousal, so there's some sort of physiological change that happens. Maybe there is a quickening of your heartbeat, you start sweating, those types of things. There's an expressive behavior, so people around you are probably going to know that that you have some sort of an emotional reaction at that time. And the last one is that conscious experience. So being able to understand, I'm angry. Obviously I can tell my blood pressure's higher. Maybe my face gets red. My face might look stern. And so really being able to understand that entire process. There are a couple different theories. There's the James Lange theory, and that is that there will be some sort of an emotional state that's going to follow the bodily response. So let's say you're on your way to school and you know that there's an upcoming test, and so you feel nervous. And then you notice that your body is sweating, maybe your pulse is racing. So this is an experienced emotion, being nervous, because there's a prior body response. The other one is the 2-factor, the Schachter and Singer theory, and that is that our emotion has two different components. There's a physical arousal and then that cognitive label. So it's important to remember that the arousal fuels the emotion and then the cognition channels our emotion. So we might, if we use that same example as far as walking to school, the big exam, the fact that we're nervous about the test is going to fuel that emotion. So the test is going to fuel the emotion, and how we react to that is going to channel that emotion. Are we going to continue to be nervous? Are we going to be able to take a deep breath and just perform at our best? Now, the interesting thing, we talked a little bit about overconfidence in week 7, but most people are pretty good at recognizing or interpreting nonverbal threats, if we're looking at another person's body language. But we can usually find it difficult to determine whether somebody is being deceitful. Now, for those of you that have had training in this, you've learned certain things. If somebody is lying to you, they tend to look down the left-hand side. They don't look you in the eye when they're talking, those types of things. But in general, most humans are not able to tell when somebody's being deceitful based on the emotions or the expressions that they show. Women are generally better than men at detecting nonverbal signs of emotions. They're also more willing to share emotions. Now, that's not to say that men aren't emotional. They are. But actually, there's a different part of the brain that is affected when men experience some sort of a physiological response. And so women have greater emotional abilities. And, one of the ways we can see that is if men are going to, which they don't very often, describe their emotions, it's probably going to be in very simple terms. So the gender difference, the way the brain is developed between males and females is going to help determine how an individual is going to respond to emotions. It's no secret that women tend to be, or females tend to be, more empathic as well, and that comes into play with them usually being the primary caregiver, taking care of the children. So an example would be Pat is very accurate at reading others' nonverbal behaviors and is more likely to express empathy based on a body response. Alex seems to feel almost as much empathy. So if we had to determine whether Pat and Alex, what gender they were, based on the information we were given, we would know that Pat would be a female because, again, able to express emotion and more empathic, and Alex would be a male just because the male is not going to be as willing to show emotion or, to be empathic.